news on Voxtur this morning about a group of shareholders that want to replace the board of directors and take over. And I'm sitting down with Colin to talk about what his thoughts are, maybe how he's going to vote and things like that. So Colin, thanks for doing this.
No problem.
So you've been in the investing world for quite some time. You kind of can see through the BS of what's going on. So can you give us your thoughts on what just came out, what it means? Just, talk to us.
So I think there's a couple of different things that you have to look at. So so let's look at this in order. So first off, who are they proposing as an alternative slate of board of directors? So they are all, so two of the three of the five are Nick Smith is Rice Park Capital, Chris Bixby is Rice Park Capital, Jeff Hilligoss is Rice Park Capital, Al Qureshi is former Rice Park Capital, and then Chad Neal was put into the company at Voxtur via Jim Albertelli, and then Thomas Holthus is a lawyer at a firm that bears his name as one of the partners. So this is not what I would call shareholder-friendly group. I would say this is a self-interested group of people that are focused on. Now, I don't know their exact motivation, but I know that money is always the motivation in this environment. Nick's, and some of the elements where Nick Smith says, "Oh, this management, this board of directors, this, that." Well, Nick Smith was the chairman of the board during a large part of this process. He sold a company that immediately started to underperform. Then you have
can you make it clear, what do you mean by he sold the company that started to underperform? What do you mean by that?
Sorry, Rice Park Capital sold Blue Water into Voxtur. Blue Water almost immediately started to materially underperform, and has caused much of this, much of the issues that we're experiencing because of the debt that was incurred in order to take on that acquisition. And so so they're then selling. They've then come back in. They see that the company's on its knees, and I think what they're trying to do is reclaim Blue Water at pennies on the dollar for their own interest. So you have Rice Park Capital, which has many companies in which they're invested as competitors to Voxtur, trying to reclaim. That's my point of view. You can take your own point of view and take that company back at pennies on the dollar. I do not think that this is a shareholder-friendly group of slate of board of directors. And then, they go and they criticize Gary's salary of $1 million. I think that's a fair criticism. I think that is a fair criticism. However, they then go and put Chad Neal on there, who had a massive salary package. Chad Neal is there as a Jim Albertelli nod. Jim Albertelli also got paid $1 million, plus he's getting severance. Jim Albertelli didn't pay, undercut Voxtur on repayment of the accounts receivable or accounts payable from Jim Albertelli's firm, but accounts receivable at Voxtur. They undercut that amount. Then Chad Neal came on, and he had a sizable salary, I think of $500,000 or so. And so this criticism that somehow this is all under Gary Yeoman, and that these guys are going to be, the bearers of great corporate governance and controlling the purse strings. I don't think that's it. I think they're looking to, they have a lot of. And
so you don't trust Chad, who was
I just think
hip to hip with.
it's not a trust thing. It's just, who is he representing? He is there to get the blockers votes from Jim Albertelli. That's my point of view. That's it, right? He's there. Jim Albertelli obviously has an axe to grind with
and Jim Albertelli is the same guy who on the side started competing with the AOL.
Yeah, so that's a whole other ball of wax, right? So unfortunately, they refer to Gary Yeoman and this consulting agreement with the paralegal firm. As I understand it, that consulting arrangement, as I understand it, they actually do make money via that process and having that relationship. And so I don't think it, while we see the payout is isolated, I don't believe that the received payments are isolated, and that's just a problem. And so there is a do I think that there are some cost control issues and that there's some of these payments are out of whack? 100%. Do I think that these guys are standing in a circle of virtuous puritanical corporate governance? No, I don't. I think that this is a self-serving move by a bunch of private equity guys that are trying to get this company for pennies on the dollar at a point when it's probably on the cusp of turning around. And do I think that there's some backbiting going on in behind the scenes? Absolutely. But I don't think that, in many ways, at least, Gary's is not here trying to Gary doesn't have any ulterior motive at this point that I could, or ever, other than to get the company to grow. There's nowhere that I see, he's a shareholder like the rest of us. He has got a lot of different people in here. He's got his reputation at risk. Bank of Montreal is in large part in the firm as a function of Gary. So I don't see Gary wanting to make this thing do anything other than to benefit shareholders. This other group would be happy to see the company go into bankruptcy and then have the company, then they can come in and buy up the parts that they want at pennies on the dollar and basically recapture Blue Water at a massive discount. Listen, if you sell it, I think they got $80 million in cash and then they were getting paid out in shares. Well, if you get paid out at 80 million and then you buy it back at 20 million, well, you're still doing pretty well. And so from my mind's eye, this doesn't really look to be a group of shareholders. This is a very specific, very self-centered group of shareholders that I don't think represent the shareholder group at large. Now, that's my interpretation. That's what I see from the slate of people. None of them are independent. They're all Rice Park Capital or Jim Albertelli Group. That's what I see on that board. And Al Qureshi, in my opinion, and I don't begrudge the guy this, is probably following the money. Where does he see himself if he's, he's not doing that to lose money. He's doing that to make some money. Now, there's, you have to remember in a lot of these things, the new group who says, oh, we're going to do this, this, and this, they could make Al Qureshi whole in a different method than any of us shareholders. And so, it's a very, you have to look at it as, can Al Qureshi be made whole by this group if they buy the company through some other process or take it under or just pay out the debt and take over the debt and then force the company into bankruptcy and take over the whole company for $27 million or 37 or whatever the hell the number is. So there's a whole bunch of ways of backdooring this that are nefarious that I don't see as, you know, it reminds me of that billboard with all the sheep, you know, and there's a billboard of a wolf on top saying, "I am going to eat you." And the other sheep, one sheep says to the other, he tells it like it is. You know, I think if you look at this, this is a group of private equity investors who are sophisticated, who have an agenda that is separate and apart. They are cherry picking information, and they are, you know, Jim Albertelli's handpicked guy, Chad Neal, got paid a very pretty penny. Jim Albertelli, as I understand it, did not pay back one of his $1 million loans. Jim Albertelli undercut the company by underpaying one of the accounts receivables that they had. That's part of that group. Al Qureshi is obviously a senior executive, and he has a history at Rice Park. And my belief is that there would be some sort of deal made that would make him whole on the other side of a transaction. That's what it looks like to me. So, you know, these things get very messy. For a couple of $100, these guys put out a press release that has the impact of being a very seismic event. They have, as I understand it, don't quote me on this, they have around 19% of the vote. And so I don't see shareholders looking at this and going, "Oh, this is in my best interest." In my opinion, this is a very dangerous offering, and I don't see how the this group is aligned with the shareholders writ large. Remember, they got $80 million in their pocket. They could turn around, take that $80 million and do stuff with it. So I don't see, or 30 million, or whatever the hell the number was. You know, they can arbitrage their own.
I mean, they got money. They got cash. I think it was directly 30 million cash directly from Voxtur.
US, right?
Yeah, and then what about the debt part?
Yeah, so I think that was to fuel that part. So they got 30 million US. So whatever that is, you know. So listen, they could probably, you add enough noise, you take over the debt, you could probably get the whole company if they, you know, do that. So it's a dangerous time for this company. There's no doubt about it. You know, I think if there's anything good that comes out of this, maybe BMO comes back with a slightly better terms that will settle down everything around everybody. Management comes back with some concessions of their own in order to remedy some of the complaints that are thrown their way from that letter, and then we could maybe have a slightly better. That's what my hope is that there can be some good that comes out of all of this. But I don't see this as me. I wouldn't trust these guys as far as I could throw them. I don't see them as aligned with shareholders. I see them as aligned with their own self-interest as private equity that sold a company and now is trying to get it back.
So, I mean, the only things that, you know, you as a shareholder you need to do is to vote.
Well,
right?
You just vote for the original slate. You don't vote with the new slate. That's
right.
it.
So that, I mean, from what you're saying is, I understand how you're going to vote.
Yeah, I mean, this is my interpretation. This is my spidey senses after, you know, having had this press release as long as everybody else. You know, as I've said in many times, this has been unprecedented times in the real estate space or in the finance space. And so it's problematic that the that it happened at the time. This is a company that has had to run into sharp, pointy objects at all points. There's a lot of highly self-interested people involved with this company. We've seen their actions, and this just seems to be more of the same. And it unfortunately is in large part because there's no single large shareholder from the true shareholder group that's on the field anymore.
Yeah. All right. That's good. Thanks for your thoughts.
Yeah, my pleasure. My instincts are just, I would not vote in favor of this group. That's my belief. But it would be nice to see BMO make an overture to placate some of this, and it would be nice to see management make some overtures to placate. Because some of the criticisms are fair, but coming from that group, they're a bit rich, given that they've all been suckling at the teat of this stuff. And, if you turned around and said, and cast the magnifying glass at that group, I don't think you would look at it and go, oh, these guys are without any fault of their own. So I don't, that it's pretty rich coming from that group.